SonarFeed, episode 270, Washington Legends or Legends of Washington. Which one is
Legends
it?
of Washington
Legends
Soccer.
of Washington.
You could say
yes.
Washington Legends.
Yeah,
Go with it.
Kind of the same.
We'll
thing.
take that.
Yeah. I am Mickey Turner. You can find me on the Twitters at TurnerESQ. My co-host over there on the other side.
Way over here, Tom Biro, a.k.a. a number of various things on Twitter. I'm hard to find. And in between us, we have some Legends of Washington Soccer. To my left, Alan Hinton. You have the floor to introduce yourself, and then we'll head on down.
Thank you. I'm an Englishman, but I am now a U.S. citizen. Thank you very much, and I'm happy that I am in this nice situation. I've been in Seattle for 40 years. I've loved soccer, and I love what it is today. And many years ago, it was successful, but it wasn't like it is today. I mean, all lanes have come together in soccer, all the youth, all the GSSL, the adults, the co-eds, the kids playing soccer. They all lead to the king of the castle, which is the Sounders, which has become a very, very big club.
Excellent. And to your left, everyone's right, we have Gary Wright. Thank you for joining us.
No, thank you for having me. Alan's got such a rich soccer football history. Everything else pales. But I got involved in the game late in life, and it just became an absolute passion. And I always love telling the story that I was an American football guy and had been involved in sports ever since I was 14. Started working in sports when I was 14 and had a career of well over 50 years. But it wasn't until about the mid-'90s that I even thought about soccer. And all of a sudden, like I said, just fell in love with it.
Excellent. Well, we've got a lot of things to talk about tonight. We talk about a couple of really amazing weeks for Sounders. We know there's a big event coming up that we want to make sure we touch on there. And we've got about an hour of your time-ish. So we're happy to kind of mix it up and dive right in. But I think it would be great to maybe just talk a little bit about this last weekend of Sounders. If you have any kind of thoughts and comments. I know Mickey and I have been kind of online discussing things, but how are you both feeling? I'm hoping you like what you see. There's probably no reason not to, but would love your kind of thoughts and comments on where things are so far for Sounders.
Well, he's going to be a lot more technical than I am. I kind of look at it just from a layman's point of view, and I think they look great. I think Brian's doing a tremendous job with that team, and they move the ball, and they're attack-minded, and yet still pretty strong in the back. And I just feel like they've got a legitimate chance of winning it all. Now, you don't know what's going to happen. It's a long season, and you don't know about injuries, and that's the one factor that can throw things off. But if everybody stays healthy and guys come in and make a contribution off the bench, I think they'll have a great year.
From my point of view, everyone was obsessed, particularly the crowd that have become very knowledgeable over the past many years. Everybody was obsessed with the fact that we got up to such a bad start last year. So I think after 2 games, not against the greatest opponents, to be frank, we've got 6 points. Well, you can't do any better than get 6 points. And the last game was a shutout. We were on fire. It's a happy club. As Gary just said, Brian Smetzer, who's a local boy, he's doing a remarkable job. I call him Sir Brian. And he asked me why I call him Sir Brian. And I go, well, because I got to the final, 1982, lost. Jimmy Gabriel, lovely man who got to the final with the Sounders, 1977, lost in the final. The only person in the 40 years of history for the Sounders, if you like, that's won the real big one. is Brian Smetzer. That's why I call him Sir Brian, and he's a wonderful guy. I call him a boy because I drafted him when he was 17. He played for Lake City Hawks. I drafted him for the Sounders, and I had him at the Tacoma Stars, and then I had him at the Little Sounders, 94, 95, and I've been instrumental in trying to help him along the way, and we're good friends. He treats me with a lot of respect, and he's getting a lot of respect for the job he's done. He's wonderful in the locker room. The game has changed. Years ago, you could bully players. Can't bully them anymore. So
You
Brian,
wouldn't bully anybody.
no, I wouldn't bully. No, I mean, to be fair, when I was coaching, you could get away with more than you can today. I used to say to players, "What's going on with you?" In a pretty strong turn, a move, then you'd walk away, and then they'd get the bite, and then they'd show you on Saturday that they were the best player. I had a player here called Steve Daly. It was once the most expensive trade in England. He went from Wolverhampton Wanderers, which was my first club. He went to Manchester City for £1.4 million. And then I bought him to the Sounders, 1981. And you can't talk to players like you could then. But occasionally I'd walk by Steve Daly and I'd go, and I knew there's a big game coming up at the weekend. I'd say, I'm not sure about you, Steve. And I'd keep a straight face. And he'd look at me and he says, "Oh, you don't think I can play, coach?" I go, "I'm not sure yet, Steve." But I wouldn't sit down with him and talk. I'd just on the fly. He'd be the best player by a mile on the Saturday. And you can do that with top players because top players, like we see with the Seahawks, they can always go to another gear. The average player can get here and they're 100% flat out all the time. But the good player, like a BMW, you're going down the freeway and all of a sudden somebody gets in your way, the BMW's gone. An old truck, bang. But that's like athletes. Some athletes play so easy. And we Sounders have some really good players who play easy. By the way, Gary, who was with the Seahawks for many, many years, you need to know that the press box at CenturyLink is called the Gary Wright press box. Now, you don't get that kind of title unless you've been a wonderful servant to the Seahawks and to the game as Gary Wright. And he does love soccer. He loves Liverpool because he's connected there. He loves Barcelona, and he loves the Sounders. And that's what's happened. That relationship that started in the beginning, I'm sure you were involved when Todd Lewicki, who was the CEO of the Seahawks, and Adrian Hanauer got together and formed a partnership. Was one of the best partnerships I've ever seen.
No question.
It's almost similar to the Atlanta situation. Did you see Atlanta on Saturday?
Yeah,
on Sunday?
70,000.
70,000 fans.
Well, Atlanta took that model, working with the NFL team, and what that did at the beginning, it opened up a lot of doors. Yeah. It opened up doors that might not have opened before.
Yeah.
I mean, today, there's not still that physical connection between the Seahawks and Sounders, even though.
But didn't Atlanta visit Seattle a few times?
Yeah, they pretty much said that they slept in Seattle offices for several months in their run-up. So they basically took the Sounders model and just
they did that. They did the same thing, but
I'll tell you something you
that's
didn't
what they
know.
can do.
When Cincinnati played here first game, the goalie had a nightmare for Cincinnati. On the bench was a young kid who played for the UW named Spencer Ritchie. I'm a good friend of his dad. So last Thursday, come to my little bar in Kirkland, showed up Bill Ritchie, the dad. He said, "Spencer's starting on Saturday." And I go, "He's got a good game to start." He was playing for Cincinnati at Atlanta in front of those 70,000 people, and they got a 1-1 tie. So what a great start for this young man. Now, there's another indication that we're producing good players around here.
Which I would say we're definitely starting to see a little bit more crop up. Not just obviously having Jordan Morris and other people that have gone to UW or whatever it is, but now the Defiance, that's clearly part of the model, Sounders Academy and up. It took them a few years to kind of figure it out and go, through some bumps and bruises, but it feels like they've got a little bit of flow now. From the youth system or sort of the regional youth systems and academies and whatnot, all the way up, frankly, directly to Sounders at this point, which is pretty amazing.
I went down to the Defiance game on Friday, and you could just tell that they were a step better as just a group than they were last year, and then definitely as they were in 2015 and 2016 when they were S2 playing at Tukwila. And, that's Garth's brainchild, essentially.
I was going to say, it is Garth's brainchild, and it's always been something that Adrian has really wanted, was a strong youth system. So between the two of them, it's starting to really pay off.
Yeah.
I think it's a very good plan. At the end of the day, we'll see how many players make the first team, because there's a lot of benefits from producing your own talent. It stops you spending millions to buy players. Eventually, see what happens in soccer is same in football. I think if a player gets to the point where he's got 1 year left on his contract, you better trade him or get him to sign another contract, because he could walk out of the door at the end of the next year. So all these puzzles come to play, and the Sounders sold DeAndre Yedlin, who's from this area, went to O'Day. He is playing every minute of every game for Newcastle in the English Premier League. So what a future this young man's got. Now, what will happen with DeAndre when he's 27, 28? His contract will be up. He'll either come back and make a big hit, or he'll sign for the big hit over there. Mm-hmm. So contracts, I don't think the press always does a great job. Well, they don't always know the inside conversation about a contract, but producing players is a marvelous thing. And I do think I congratulate Adrian and Garth Lagaway for making sure that these young kids that are supposed to be so good at the U17 level are on the roster. Yeah. And they'll quietly introduce, I think what they'll do, some teams in this league aren't very good. So sometimes we'll be winning 4-5-0. They might have a young kid on the bench, and they'll put him in for 10 minutes. And that's what they do in old England. You got to try and throw them in the deep end. And if they come through, then you go, wow, we got a bit of talent here. And I think the club's firing on all cylinders. It'll be interesting how we do against the best teams, because it's a happy club. Most of the players, or almost all of them, want to be here, which wasn't always the case when we first began. Mm-hmm. So I think the club's come a long way, and congratulations to the ownership for supporting what the coaches want and the general manager wants. I think it's happy days at the Sounders.
Which is a change from the last few years.
Yeah, first half's been tough.
Yeah, we've talked about that obviously a fair amount, and it prickles Garth a little bit when the subject comes up, just because I think he's heard it for the last 3 years that slow starts, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure the team, Schmetzer's tired of hearing about it. I'm sure the players are tired of hearing about it. But you got to go out there and change the narrative, and they've been able to do that to start the year. So. That's obviously good to see from a fan's perspective, and I'm sure they're happy to not have to hear about it anymore.
Yeah, for sure.
I think a couple of moments ago, Coach, you had talked about obviously Yedlin, but just growing the youth system and sort of how that changes the dynamics overall. MLS has been. There's been the retirement league, and there's the MLS 1.0 and 2.0 and 3.0 and all these other things people throw around. I think, do you think that there's a possibility that a handful of the clubs are going to become like grow talent, become selling teams, at least for a little while, just to see how it works? I mean, Almiron is a huge, I thought Yedlin was a big deal. Almiron doubles down on that, and he's paying off, he's playing. So the two of them are really specific examples, but do you think that that's something that Sounders and or other teams are going to explore?
I think the Sounders have worked it out. That's why they've signed Jordy Morris to a long contract. That's why they've signed Christian Roldan to a long contract. They don't want these kids to leave when they're 22, 23, 24 to go overseas, because money's one thing. The fans really don't care about money. They care about winning. The fans care about being entertained, and I think this team's entertaining the fans right now. And if you look at the back, I mean, the back line's good. The goalie's fantastic. Svensson and Roldan playing dual central midfield. That'll take a little bit of time to work out. Will we miss Ozzy? Aussie's in Minnesota. He's obviously taken the Aussie Alonso spirit to a bad Minnesota team, and they've won 2 games.
Yeah, they look a lot better.
Yeah.
Weird.
On the road, no less.
But you know
Yeah.
what? Here's the inside track on Aussie for me. His story is sensational. He did a runner, when he was with the Cuban national team in Miami. He went into Walmart and asked for asylum. He then finished up in Carolina, and Ziggy knew about him, brought him to Seattle. I think if Miami were in this year, it would have been perfect for Aussie.
For sure.
I think he's told me he thinks he might live in Miami when he's done because his father's already there, which is great. It's a great community for Cubans and everybody else from around the world. It's a happy community, nice temperature, which he likes. But he will be missed at times because, I mean, let's face it, when he had that look on his face, he was probably going to boot somebody. And even in there, when he became captain, Smetzer made him the captain, he calmed down, didn't he? I mean, he knew exactly how far to go, and he'll be missed. But in the end, he's got to take care of his family, and I'm sure that Minnesota made him a very, very good offer that he probably couldn't turn down.
Well, and it's funny you bringing up Ozzy over the past few seasons when he's been out for various reasons, injuries and such, and the team looked really, really poor. There was, I think, an expectation because it had happened enough times that that's what you would get this year when he wasn't here. And I think what we've seen is now it's not like you're playing without Ozzy. You're just playing with the team that you have. And it's weird to see it. Like, it's unfortunate. I mean, or fortunate for him. Like, get what you can get from a contract standpoint and keep playing and starting and doing what you want to do. But from a historical Sounders perspective, it's sad to see a player like that go. But it is interesting. I think a lot of people were concerned that midfield scenario would be a disaster, and it really hasn't been. It's going to be it's different, but Roldan he's going to be that destroyer type kind of player. But they have just figured it out. It's very interesting to see how quickly. And again, very potent offense. The forwards are amazing. Jordan and Rodriguez playing, as wingers, just doing amazing things on the field together, have changed the game. But the midfield does not look poor or like it's a hole anymore. And that was something we definitely saw the last 2-3 seasons.
I think when we play Chicago on Saturday will be a challenge.
It's a great test.
Because Chicago...
Well, it's a road. First of all, it's a road game.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a road game.
Yeah.
It's an early game.
And it's in Bridgeview, which is not a great venue to watch a game. The crowd will probably be not great.
Light.
Yeah. The weather. It's early March in Chicago,
And it's noon.
Yeah, an early start.
Yeah.
So
Like,
All of those factors are real things. You just have to push through it, and that's why it'll be a good test for them.
yeah.
But,
Yeah.
in the
Anybody
end,
in this league can beat you,
oh, absolutely.
and especially when you go on the road.
Right.
But that's why you play the game.
But I do think the fans really, really, really respond when there's a huge challenge going on. We love the challenges against Vancouver and Portland. I happen to think the Sounders are better than both of them this year. Certainly better than Vancouver, in my opinion. I'm an old Vancouver Whitecaps coach and player at the Whitecaps. I don't think they put themselves in a position to do anywhere near as good as they did last year. They brought in a secondary coach, in my opinion. They've got Freddie Montero and they've got Andy Rose, who played for the Sounders a few years ago.
They turned over 19 players.
So it seems to me maybe they're not pushing the boat out as much as they might, because at the end of the day, you've got to get the best talent. The Sounders, for me, are 2 players away from being the best team in the league by a long way. And I think the next moves by the Sounders are critical to take us from good to excellent. And I think they're working hard, scouting, Chris Henderson and Garth Lagaway and all the contacts they have around the world. They will be looking
Where do you see those players
I was just going to say, Chris won't be at your event because he's on the road. He's going to be on the road scouting.
That's right.
So-
That's right.
Where do you see the 2 players that the Sounders
I
need
think
to?
one, he scored a goal and made a goal. And he ran by defenders and set up opportunities for everybody else. So we've got Rodriguez, and we've got Harry Shipp. Now, Jody Morris will play wide. At the end of the day, he may be a central striker, but he's such a good kid, he'll play for the team, which he's doing. He's already had a great start with 2 goals. But for me, I want more from Rodriguez. I want more from Harry Shipp. And at the end of the day, Rodriguez is a DP. And DPs need to get goals and assists. And I'm waiting to see whether he'll do that. He looks good. He gives the ball away sometimes when he shouldn't. But at the end of the day, the best thing for this club would be to get another Zakawani who can run, who can dribble, who can cross and score. And they're hard to find. But in the end, I hope Rodriguez turns out to be a home run for us. I'm still waiting for it, even though he's looking good.
Where's the other position? If there is one.
Well, I think it all depends on how Svensson settles down as the anchor in the centre mid. How long will he be here? He's the wrong side of 30 now. He's still playing on the Swedish national team, which is great. He loves being here, I understand. Will Roldan be able to play that role? Roldan won't be anywhere near the star he was when he was wide on the right, because he was always getting into position to score a goal. My one regret with Ozzy, and I used to tell him, Ozzy used to have a nosebleed when he got near the box.
Yeah.
And I used to say, Ozzy, go all the flipping way to the 6-yard line. Don't worry about what's behind you. Go and get yourself a goal. But in the end, the left back situation is interesting. The left back, you've got Nuho, who I like. He wants to be here. He don't want to be here. He wants to go to another club. That's what I read. Brad Smith, who cost £3.5 million, I think it was, from Liverpool to go to Bournemouth. Bournemouth loaned him to the Sounders. Bournemouth will control that. Even though Brad Smith likes to be here, I don't see the Sounders trying to buy him for big money. So that's another situation. See, for me, if I was trying to get players to come here, and I used to do in the early 80s, they've got to want to be here. If you don't want to be in Seattle, we don't want you. And that happened a bit in the early days, but I think the club now monitors the players, talks to them in that manner. But I do think a wide player who can really run. Interesting player signed for Orlando called Nani, the Portuguese winger who played for Manchester United. He might have been an ideal player for here, but he's 31. Now, the question there is, does Nani have any gas still in the tank? I don't know. But the Sounders, for me, when we're talking about 1 or 2 players to really take us from really good to really, really good, I think that's a wonderful challenge for. But nobody's resting on their laurels here. They want to get better, better, better. I want to hammer teams every week.
You know, to me, a key piece of that is the 2 more players just give you more depth. And throughout, like I said, this is a very long season. You have got to have depth because you're going to have injuries, you're going to have suspensions, and without depth, all of a sudden you can find yourself, dropping some points that you shouldn't.
Yeah, what's interesting is the first 3 weeks, going through the Chicago game, we probably won't see any changes to the starting lineup. So we'll have seen the same starting 11 for the first 3 games, especially they have a bye after Chicago. So there's no really reason to rotate at this point. But then obviously after that, the schedule starts kicking in, and then you start having midweek games. Mm-hmm. And so at that point, as you said, there's going to be some interesting questions about how they rotate the squad. The starting 11 is probably the best in the league right now, just player for player over everyone else. But we haven't seen any of the depth players play any significant minutes really at this point. So we just don't, they're obviously not going to switch out the entire starting 11 in rotation, but, you're going to have 3 or 4 probably starting to come in. And, positions like center back, how's Roman feeling about not starting here? You've got Campbell, who's been a little shaky, I think, in his start so far.
That's complimentary.
Yeah. It's early. So, I'll be curious to see what they think about the depth they have at this point, because for once they've been fully healthy to start the season,
right?
Which is not something they had, especially last year when they were absolutely,
do you remember 3 games in a row with the same lineup?
Last year, no. Or the last couple of years, no.
But we got a question just kind of talking about depth and consistency here. Someone had asked just what are your thoughts? Does Smith stay for, I mean, you mentioned you don't think Sounders are going to write that check.
They'll make him a DP.
I don't know.
But
like a full DP. Probably.
yeah, what does
If
that
they
look
did.
like? Because he's clearly going to get the minutes right now, as long as he's healthy. So is that a comment about Nuhu, or is that a comment about Smith, or both, frankly? Because I think you didn't see enough of Smith last year, so you didn't really know what you were going to get. I had pretty high expectations. You bring an outside back from the EPL here, they're going to be a lot, but even a non-starting outside back in the EPL is going to do some damage in MLS. He looks pretty good. So, I don't know. I mean, is he a kind of player you think sticks around, or do you think they end up having to move again in the summer?
For everything I can see, he likes being here. I've talked to him myself at practice that he really likes the Seattle. He likes playing here. I remember when he did his hamstring last year. I think Bournemouth drove the deal and insisted he sat out for 6 weeks. And after 4 weeks, he was sprinting 100%, but he couldn't play because Bournemouth was saying 6 weeks. And that's, clubs don't like loans. Loans are short-term deals. I'll give you an example in the English Championship, where you're trying to get in the big league, the EPL. Some teams will go and get 3 loan players from different clubs, like Chelsea, Man United. And if they go up, the players go back to their clubs, and they're automatically going to get relegated the next year unless they've got zillions of dollars to go and buy new talent. But the loan system, I used to use it a lot, and I think it's the Sounders for me are probably near or work with some clubs in Europe to say, if you've got a player that's that near being in your starting team, send him to us. And living in America, you have to become a man. You have to fend for yourself. I know you get your air ticket, and here's your hotel room, and here's your expenses, and here's your lunch. But when you go out in the big world in Seattle, nobody knows you, especially if you're a new player. But in Europe, they know everybody. So you're going to fend for yourself when you come to America. You'll fall in love with the country, and it will make you that much better to be a starter in the big leagues, or you'll sign him here. So I think there's a lot of stuff out there, and this debate we're having now is great. We don't do enough of it because the fans need to get more involved and ask more questions, which will show that they. I once called Wayne Cody when he was on the radio, and I said, the problem, Wayne? You know what the Seahawks have for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but you don't know anything about the Sounders, so... And he tried to get me fired. But the problem was I was 21-2, so there was no chance, you know what I mean? But in the end, I'm around soccer people. They know so much more at times about the Washington Huskies football team and the Seahawks. And they know enough about soccer to enjoy the game, but they don't know the delicacies like we do in Europe.
What's actually interesting to segue a little off of that, the team that is the current MLS champions, Atlanta, they're off to a slow start.
Yeah.
And their social media has been blowing up with complaints. Some of it's been hilarious to read. And so that kind of goes to what you're talking about, where the fans start really putting the pressure on the front office. They
want
on
the
radio.
coach out. They want the coach out already, don't they?
DeBoer out
Frank
is
DeBoer,
a hashtag. And so, that's kind of an interesting thing that, I think there's some of that here in Seattle for sure.
Well, first of all, what a tough act to follow.
Yeah.
You follow Tata Martino, and if you don't win every game by 3 or 4 goals, you're not going to be a success. No. So it's like the guy who followed John Wooden at UCLA. Those are big shoes to fill.
Yeah, and as someone points out in the comments, they got booed off the field yesterday in Atlanta for a tie.
Week two, real hard.
Yeah. So it's just an interesting change in MLS because some teams clearly don't have that amount of relevance in their market. I think we do here.
Frank DeBoer didn't help himself when he said, "We got to face reality."
Yeah.
I don't think that went down too well with the fans. But the other thing is, the next home game, what will the attendance be? That's another thing.
It'll be big.
Yeah.
They'll be there.
Yeah.
Those fans will be there. You talk about relevance in your marketplace, and that's something.
It's clearly there. It's clearly
absolutely
in Atlanta right now. So
it's It's pretty nuts. I do expect at some point we'll see whether that's going to stick around for a while or not. But I think the point you made at the top, Gary, like they've sort of built it right. You know, they really thought about it, and it wasn't just we've got the money. It was like we've got the money, and we built a great place, and it's actually pretty affordable. And
it's the commitment to be successful. There have been other teams that have been associated with NFL teams, and the commitment is not the same as it was here or as it is in Atlanta.
Yeah.
So I think that's an important piece of it.
But we've also got a very active owner. I mean, a lot of owners don't go near the club.
Yeah, Adrian's at practice pretty much every day.
Adrian, by the way, Adrian played in the media game 2 weeks ago.
I have some recollection of that.
You played, didn't you?
Yes. Well,
have you recovered? Have you recovered yet?
You were on the
have
field.
Have you recovered
I
yet?
was on the field.
I was with Jeff Baker from the Seattle Times the other day.
yeah.
He broke 2 ribs.
Yeah, it was a little rough.
I thought there was going to be a heart attack on the field. Honestly, it was. But Adrian
Or in the
Hanauer,
coach's box.
I've seen Adrian flick the ball up in practice. I thought I was very impressed with him.
He was pretty
I sent-
competent,
I sent
especially
him-
relative to the rest of us.
I sent him an email the next day, and I said, "I've never seen you play before, but you did very well." He said, "I'm still very sore."
Yeah.
That's really funny.
That's something that Sounders do. They get involved with the infrastructure of the club. Look what they do for these kids with cancer. And I lost a son with cancer when he was age 9, so it means a lot to me. But last weekend there was children with cancer from the children's hospital.
Yeah.
And, it's remarkable.
It's actually a really good addition. The way they have woven it into the pregame is like we have a honorary captain. Like it's just a cool idea.
Yeah.
And the friction is pretty low, and I think people really thought it was neat. And I had heard about it a week or two before the season started, and I was like, that's a good idea. And I'm hoping that kind of pays off for them overall. So this is a good kind of natural transition into some cool things that are coming up. So I've got a good email from you up in my inbox right now. So you're doing some cool things March 19th. There's an event. Why don't you tell us what's up and what people can expect and how they can get involved?
Well, we have a group, Washington Soccer Legends, and it's a group kind of to preserve the history of the sport and to give young people something to know what occurred before they started playing. And one of the things we wanted to do was to honor some of our legends in the past. And so the first one of these that we're doing is our guest here to your left, my right, Alan Hinton. So we're going to have an evening with Alan Hinton on March 19th. It's at the Kirkland Performance Center. If you go to wasoccerlegends.org, there's an events page, and you can find out more about what the tickets are and all that. And it really is it's a way to get this organization off the ground. We've been around for a few years, but really without any funds, and so this will give us some impetus to do more in the community.
What's going to happen is
You're going to get roasted. That's what's going to happen.
I don't expect to be toasted, but I'll be roasted, and that's fine. These events, which Gary is leading really, really wonderfully well, is about what happens in England, particularly. In England, almost nightly, there's question and answers with former top soccer players who are all living there. And then people go to a pub and they drink and they ask questions and they raise a little bit of money for charity. And that's what we're trying to do. I want it to happen here because I want to be the first. And I'm a guinea pig. I'm trying to make it work. And but so far we're probably going to get. I think we've already got about 200 tickets sold, and that's a lot of tickets. And I'm going to be roasted by Brian, the coach. He thinks I haven't got any stories on him, but I have as well. So Bernie James, who's a pistol, doing a great job at Crossfire. Marcus Hanneman's going to be there. Jeff Stock, who played for me at the Sounders and the Tacoma Stars. And other people are going to come there and roast. But we're going to celebrate the great things about the GSSL, but I played for 25 years. I've got great stories about my lovely years with them. The third half was often the best. You know where the third half is, don't you? In the pub. So anyway, but I was 15 years in youth soccer, and I've got the Tacoma Stars, and I've got the Sounders. So this is going to be a great evening, and we've had about the last 12 weeks we've had a meeting with high-powered people like Gary and our whole group, and we're doing really, really well. But it's an evening. We can't wait till the 20th, Gary, to say, can we do it again with somebody else?
And people have really stepped up. We've had, the Sounders are the title sponsor. Washington Youth Soccer and the Tacoma Stars immediately stepped up and are presenting sponsors. And then we've had a lot of others like Roughneck Scarves, like Crossfire, as he said, Carmine's, restaurant in Bellevue, folks like that have just stepped up to help make this a successful night. One thing that during the middle of it, we're going to do a Raise the Paddle and raise some money for scholarships for needy kids to be able to go to college. And, if they want to finish their soccer career, that's great. But it's really about getting the education.
And you have a couple of different options for tickets and such, right? So
it is, the tickets look high. But if you were buying a table to any charity event, a table would cost you $1,000
at least.
So the tickets are for a Legends ticket. You get 4 tickets. It costs you $1,000.
Okay.
If you want to buy a Premier tickets, you get 2 tickets for $400. But if you want to just support the organization and support the night and be able to hear great stories from Alan and the others, it's $100 a ticket.
That's great.
So, so for me, it's a wonderful venue. They're working so hard at the Kirkland Performance Center to accommodate us. And there'll be a lot of youth coaches in the room, former players who are coaching youth and have coached youth for many, many years. And I'm going to celebrate them because, let's face it, in today's age, these kids are out 2-3 times a week being coached, which means they're working hard. They'll play at the weekends. They'll travel. These coaches deserve a medal almost for keeping these kids safe. And the parents appreciate that, and I do too, because I did it for 15 years. And keeping the kids safe today, because a coach, if there's something wrong with a kid, the coach will know before the parents in most cases. So it's a very interesting time here. But the whole ball of wax in our area, the soccer's doing fantastic. And I know in Kirkland, the next thing they're going to try and do in Kirkland, Gary, you don't know this unless Corky's told you, but the baseball field in the heart of Kirkland, they're going to try and put a soccer field on there as well, because their motive is to keep kids busy. And I think soccer does that.
And I think that's a great segue to kind of maybe dig into what's cool, I think, in the soccer scene here. And we talked about on the show before, not necessarily with you two gentlemen, but somebody who grew up elsewhere and moved here and like always had friends who played soccer, but it was never like the kind of thing in the neighborhood, just as big as Seahawks are or Mariners or whatever. Sounders like own a pretty significant amount of the airtime. And that doesn't mean sports talk radio per se, but just like people's attention in general. And it's really, really interesting. So what's cool is this is a way to motivate people to get involved or sort of see a need in the marketplace or in the world. But aside from that, there's a lot of really cool stories and stuff. And, you know, you've mentioned Schmetzer and Marcus Hanneman. I could tell stories about Marcus Hanneman every day, and I've met him 2 times. So that's, I think, a really, really cool thing about this community specifically. And I think something you had mentioned off the air was this isn't necessarily something that happens every day in America. And maybe this is a good way to kind of kickstart that sort of thing and just drive awareness, not just for social stuff.
I know.
But soccer in general or community in general.
I know the way they do it in England because it happened to me. My first soccer game as a young kid was Wolverhampton Wanderers against Blackpool. My Uncle Ted, not my dad, took me to see the great Sir Stanley Matthews, who played on the wing for Blackpool. And I sat on his shoulders for the whole of the game. Now, I must have been 5 or less. And I fell in love with the game. I see it all the time. I came out of the
What position was Sir Stanley Matthews?
right wing. He used to be known for Sir Stanley Matthews.
One of the greatest dribblers of all time, right?
He used to go on the radio and try to make him to a commentator, but he couldn't talk. And they used to say, "What do you think about this, Sir Stanley?" He'd go, "Chippy tappy," and that's all he'd say. And the interviewer was stuck because he wants something. I overtalk, I know that, so I apologize if I'm doing that. But I get excited about the game, but I know I came out of the press box the other night. There was a family with 3 kids, must have been under 7, and they got their colours on, and they were so happy the Sounders had won. And it's a wonderful thing to keep kids busy, and I think all the soccer's really taking people from the NFL because a lot of people are not letting their kids play football anymore because of the concussion.
Yeah.
So soccer's very, very popular. I mean, look at the size of Washington Youth Soccer Association. Just off the top of my head, Jimmy McAllister runs Seattle United. Bernie James, former player, runs Crossfire. David Hogan runs a club. Bobby Howe runs a club. Wade Webber used to run Washington Premier. Fran O'Brien's heavily involved. Gary Hill's heavily involved. Neil Megson's heavily involved. And they're all coaching kids.
But you know, it's interesting because you used the word relevance before. And Casey likes to point out, the teams in Europe have such deep-rooted history. Well, when this version of the Sounders started, we called upon the old version of the old Sounders, and that really established. It gave us some roots, because think of how many generations since 1974 there are. All of that's really helped, and those roots just continue to go deeper and deeper and deeper, and that's one of the things we have in this community. The badge means something to them.
Yeah.
They understand what that badge means.
But another thing is, Gary was heavily involved, and I got to tell you, the Seahawks and the Sounders, when you started, you went absolute first ticket. Got to go first ticket. And if you hadn't done, and we'd got 32,000, I think, maybe opening night, which was great. Bought in Barcelona and Chelsea and Manchester United. If we'd have had a bad year, I bet you, and you know better than I, Vancouver and Portland might not have gone in because they came in the year after us. So we in Seattle are responsible for a lot of the leadership in Major League Soccer because Atlanta comes to see us. All the clubs that are beginning, the real model is Seattle, and it should be.
And for us, Toronto had started just a couple years before us, and we looked at Toronto. What made them special? Yep. What made them special is they took the game, and that's what the emphasis was.
Right.
I mean, it was about the game. It was about the sport. And so we didn't have to educate people about the game. It was just come celebrate the game.
One thing annoys me. In England, on a Saturday, 3 o'clock is 3 o'clock. All the games that are scheduled for 3 o'clock on a Saturday, they kick off within seconds of each other. In America, 7 o'clock ain't 7 o'clock. It's sometimes 7:10, 7:20, and that drives me nuts.
You know what? Sometimes you have to pay the bills.
Yeah, I think that's 100% about getting in those commercials for
Yes.
Fox and ESPN.
We joke about that all the time. It's like, oh, is this a Fox game or an ESPN game? And you know what time the game's going to start based on which one it is.
But I will
Either
tell
8
you,
after or 17 after. It's
English
usually the
Premier
case.
League is making billions.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a shame that Liverpool don't play Manchester United Manchester City one more time before the end of the season to really fight that deal out at the top. But NBC Sports Network is doing brilliant. You know what else is doing brilliant? Rugby, because they show rugby immediately the soccer is over.
Yeah.
And people that have maybe left the room for a minute come back and they go, this is a great game. And I watched a little bit of it on Saturday.
I watched the England-Italy game.
Yeah.
in the
Well,
afternoon the
and
other day.
The guys here, the Seawolves, are doing a good job.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, to win a
And they're
championship their
selling out,
first year.
aren't they selling
Yeah.
out?
Yeah,
It's-
they're doing a great job.
Yeah.
There were a lot of people actually, just quick sidebar on that had S2 tickets that have purchased Seawolves tickets just because they like rugby.
Yeah.
And they were like, I want to support this. It's a local team. Let's go do something,
Yeah.
which is what I think S2 did, and now Defiance, I think, is doing, is like there's some ownership, like personal ownership
Sure.
of it.
Their own identity.
You know, something that you've both kind of touched on a little bit, but it's like, you know, it's about the game and it's about community and other things. Like, do you think that now that MLS specifically and just soccer in general, obviously soccer's always been huge. Everyone I grew up with played soccer at some point. You may not have played it all the way through high school, but you might have played it when you were 6. And you know, there's just like democratization, or it's an easy sport to get access to. It's like, I need a ball, and that's basically it, you know, let's go. But do you think that the, let's just say, the careers have opened up in the sport, and that has also fed into like parents pushing their kids to maybe stay in soccer or pursue it a little longer? Whereas like minor league baseball or Major League Baseball has this just massive system beneath and around it. The NFL is just massive paydays, but a big thing, but there's also infinite numbers seemingly of, you know, high school football coaches, and like you can get jobs in that kind of space. Do you think soccer has like taken hold beyond the like handful of leagues that we have?
You know, he can speak to this much better than I can, but I think one of the things is that a lot of parents have seen soccer be an avenue to college for their kids.
Yeah.
You know, to be able to get a college scholarship through soccer. You know, hopefully be a professional.
Yeah.
But maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, they could certainly make a lot more money in some other profession. But as the money continues to grow in our league, then people really see that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of parents see that as an opportunity for their kids to get an education.
But what a situation for the parents. I mean, I know when I coach youth soccer, even 16-year-old kids, at the time I was coaching 16-year-old boys, I did 13 to college 2 times, which is 12 years. I've seen players looking like, what are you looking for? I'm looking for my grandpa. And they love the parents coming and the grandparents coming. I mean, I talk to people all the time. I'm real social. And I talk to people my age, and they go, my grandson's a good player, you know. And I go, I bet you like going to see him play, don't you? He says, oh, yeah. And they love it. But
Yeah.
I think the game, it's a very good talking point, and it's going to be an even bigger talking point when the NHL comes here. Because this city, I remember coming here 40 years ago. You know what the first thing Gary said to me 40 years ago when I came here? When he was the main man of the Seahawks PR department and everything. You know what he said to me? If ever you need anything, give me a call. And then when we started getting involved again, 2002, with the new Sounders, you know what he said? If ever you need anything, coach, give me a call. And I go, you said that I mean nearly 40 years ago. But the bottom line is that there's a lot of financial benefits in this town now that didn't used to be here. So my hope is, I'd love to see before I pass the Sounders to build their own stadium, but in the meantime, Central Link's not too shabby, is it? I mean, you know,
You're going to
mean?
get the Seahawks moving out.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to say,
Just like they almost
I
did
think
a few
they
years
move.
ago.
The
100%.
average Sounders fan is city adjacent,
Yeah.
and the average Seahawks fan is not. And I could see them in Kent and like all sorts of other areas where there's mass amounts of land.
could bring back
Well
tailgating and
before
stuff
you
like
saw
that.
something change for Sounders. And I actually
I
think it might
wouldn't-
be sooner
I
rather
wouldn't-
than later.
I wouldn't count on that.
No?
I think
You think they
I-
like the city?
I think they like the city. I think
And I
they
haven't
like the venue.
Talk to
think,
them about it, obviously. I'm just...
and they do a remarkable job with that stadium.
Yeah.
And they got
And it's-
wonderful
it's-
suites.
It's if you talk to the MLS office, I think they'll tell you one of the secrets to the Sounders' success at the beginning was playing in that stadium that was downtown.
Right.
Okay, it may not have been what they wanted, being a soccer-specific stadium, but we were able to get crowds that, you know.
For sure.
But it is right there in the heart of the city, accessible to everything, restaurants, bars, everything else, to add to the atmosphere of the game.
But
Yeah, I don't think there's any
I don't think
chance
Sounders
that the Sounders
ever move from
out of-
downtown.
yeah.
Seahawks, I absolutely think would move.
I
Don't
would,
forget, we played. The
no
Sounders
chance.
played in the.
All right,
we played
you
in
have
the-
more information than I
No,
do. So.
I'm retired. I have
Yeah,
no information.
uh-huh.
But don't forget, the Sounders played in the Kingdom and had big crowds for a while.
Yeah.
So I was thrilled when they called it the Sounders
It's-
again, because there was debate about that, and it was the right name.
Yeah.
A friend of mine said, it was in the business. He said, it's easier to recreate an old brand than create a new one.
Do you, you know,
but
you
the
touched,
old brand was the Sounders, which was successful for the most part.
you touched briefly on the NHL, and I know that there is a theory by many people that that's going to further divide people's time, or let's call it sports time. And at some point, instead of being the like new shiny thing in town, that NHL franchise may take that mantle. Frankly, do you think that there's enough like money, interest, spare time for like Seattleites and people within the 30-mile zone
I don't
to
think
handle
there's
that?
I don't think there's any question.
Yeah.
There is no doubt in my mind. Sounders fans are Sounders fans.
Yeah.
Some of them may end up being NHL fans too. Some of them might be Seahawks fans. Some might be Mariners fans. But when we started, and it was a joint operating agreement with the Seahawks and the Sounders, the crossover between Seahawks ticket holders to Sounders ticket
Pretty
holders
low, wasn't it?
It's like 10?
was less than 7%.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
there's room. There's room for everybody. Everybody has their own niche. There are people that are going to just be hockey fans, but there's going to be others that are going to like other sports too.
And
Yeah.
I would say
The-
that this NHL season doesn't really overlap with MLS anyway.
But it's a
You're
lot of games,
yeah.
though. It's a lot of games. NHL is a huge schedule. But
Yeah.
my concern is this, and it's only, I know how committed Adrian is and the other owners. They will not let the team go down the hill, because that's the only danger for me. If we suddenly started being a bad team,
Oh yeah, sure.
then I think that would hurt. But I think the owners and the way the club is structured, this will not happen here.
How many
Because-
how many franchises have never missed the playoffs? I mean, what a feather in your hat that is, and to keep that streak going, I mean, is absolutely incredible. To me, the greatest thing the NHL team has is their operating group. Todd Lywicki, who obviously we used to work with, John Rizzardini, Bill Chapin, Lance Lopes. I mean, so many great people they have. They're going to do a terrific job. Are they going to affect the Sounders? No, they're going to have their own. They're going to have their own fans and do terrific.
So
I think that's absolutely right, because if you look at the numbers playing the GSSL, the old men's league, or the old women and men and co-eds and youth soccer, it's expanding big time. And the quality of play is getting there. Like Gary said earlier, a lot of them are looking for college scholarships for soccer. And you've got great universities here. I mean, Pete Fewing's doing a great job at CLU. What's his name? The coach at the UW.
Jamie Clark.
Jamie Clark. I used to play against his dad, who's now the coach at Notre Dame. You got Leslie Gallimore and Amy Griffin at the UW. I think Leslie's leaving now after almost 20 years being here. She's a neat gal. And you got CLU women, very, very good. Up at Western, they got decent teams. Even Northwest College, where the Seahawks used to practice in Kirkland, they've got a decent team too. But college soccer, a lot of people will debate, is it the right thing to do to go play college soccer? Whereas in my case, I left school at 15 and went to the pros as an apprentice. 15. And I didn't walk out on school. That was when you're supposed to leave in my day. And I made it. Some people say when you're 16, 17, 18, you should be at the big leagues, because going to college is not always the best soccer in the world, but it's education. And sometimes you need something to. I mean, I was on the staff with 13 kids, 13 of them. I made it. And there's another one or two got a living out of it afterwards, but not at the top level like I did. And I was one of the best clubs in the world, but there's 13 kids on the staff, on the apprentice staff. So for me, I had a kid playing for me named Nick Downing, who became the captain of the U17 national team, and his dad wouldn't let him go. He wouldn't let us. He didn't. His dad wouldn't let him come to England. When we went, I took the team to England, and I told the dad, I said, "Look, you got to be careful, because if your son doesn't make it, and you're watching a big league game together, he might say to you, if you don't do the right thing, teach him how to fly. And sports is about speed now and quickness, but kids need to become adults real quick." And I tell all the kids at the Sounders when I go to training camp, I go, "This is one tough business." And they look at you like that, and I go, "See him over there? He'll cut your legs off for your job." It's the same in the NFL. It's the same in hockey. It's the same in basketball. It's a tough business. How many people make it?
Less than 1%.
I mean, you got a kid right now on Defiance that played, was out there for a hot second in that friendly for Sounders, 15 years old. Now, I know we had a standout player up in Vancouver that's now getting minutes in Bayern.
Alfonso Davis.
Amazing. Let's talk about this for a second, because it's going to happen right in front of us. We're going to see it or not, I don't know. But even just that hot second in a friendly, you saw some things from that kid. And like, Danny Leyva, is that a player either or both of you expect to see on the big club this season?
I think big clubs, and I've done it myself, and I was good at recognizing talent. You don't need to see a perfect performance over 90 minutes. You need to see a little few flashes of brilliance. First thing you'll ask a scout when they recommend a player is, does he have quick feet? But in the old days, Michael Owen, who became a top player at Liverpool, they almost didn't sign him when he was a boy because he was tiny. And they go, he's too small. And then they met his mother. And his mother was a foot taller than Michael was. And one of the scouts says, "Oh, we'll be all right. Every kid grows taller than their mom." So they signed him, and he became a world superstar. But the game is about stories. And for me, quick feet, giving players an opportunity. The problem is if you get an opportunity too quickly, and don't forget the young kids. Brian, I've seen Brian do it. He'll bring them up to practice with the first team. And, of course, they practice. It's all in. It's keep away and different styles of keep away, but it's all quick stuff. Well, some kids can't go the pace. But if you can go the pace and you're young, then they got a chance.
And that's why he came along, because I learned a long time ago, you let the coach answer those kinds of questions, and the PR guy stands in the background.
Just goes, okay.
I want you to know that I've never heard Gary Wright on the radio or TV ever.
Doesn't happen often.
But he was the main guy when it was the big guy, the coach.
Mike Holmgren?
Mike Holmgren. I'm going to tell you a funny story now about Gary. This is true. And Mike Holmgren told this story when they gave him a send-off at CenturyLink, and it was a wonderful ceremony. We all had drinks, and he was on the stage. So Mike Holmgren said, "Well, I was so mad with the Seahawks one day." He said, "I wanted to fight them." And then he leaves the room, and he goes in the middle of the room where Gary is. And Gary's going to tell him which presser in the next room. So Mike's fuming, and Gary couldn't calm him down when he normally could. And he said, Gary said, "Well, if it makes you feel any better, Coach, punch me in the face."
I didn't say in the face, but I did say
punch
me.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it jolted Mike, and then he went through to the press. Hello. But that's what he did. That's why the press box is called the Gary Wright press box. Isn't that something?
I think it's amazing, as someone who's a recovering public relations professional. No, it never goes away, and it's I know exactly what it is. I worked in broadcast for a minute, and the joke was if you have one more. The joke was if you get on television, you're fired. And
that's no joke.
And there are places where that's for real, and I had the head of our department once got on TV on one of the like kind of flying cameras, and we found out about it. Like someone told us who was monitoring it in our headsets that she had been on television, and we all went to find her on a red carpet at an event to tell her she was fired. And it was really funny.
That is.
Because she's the one who had been espousing it, for 6 months. Like, don't ever get on television. And yet here she was.
There's nothing like the bright lights. I mean, when the bright lights are shining, everybody, that's when they open up and say things. I shouldn't have said that. And
it's good times, though.
yeah.
So
No, I think I love the conversation about soccer. I love the conversation about the Sounders. You can give me as much of it morning, noon, and night. And in the end, don't be afraid to ask tough questions because that makes us all better for it.
So tough questions. I know we've taken about an hour of your time, and you're going to be heading out shortly. I'd love two things from you both. Prediction for Saturday for Sounders, and share your pitch about having people come out on the 19th. I think it's a great event that we'd love to have people support. So if they can't do that, what else they can do to get involved with either the organization or just something that you care and are passionate about?
Well, on the website for Washington Soccer Legends, you could make a donation, which would certainly go far for the organization.
And that's wasoccerlegends.org.
.org, right. And as far as predictions, I learned a long time ago, I don't make predictions, but we're going to win on Saturday.
Well done.
Okay. My prediction is this that I made before the season started. I put it on Twitter. I said we'll have a good or very good season. After 10 games, we'll be 7-3. I now think we could be better than that. And I think based on, let's compare a little bit, Manchester United, that's gone from being a very, very unhappy club under Mourinho, who thought he was bigger than the whole club. And it's a shame because the guy's got a brilliant record.
I mean, he still thinks that right now.
Well, he
so.
does, but he's sitting on his money. Every time he gets fired, he makes 10 million or more. And that's happened to him 3-4 times. But the bottom line is, there's the example. Solskjaer goes in, the Norwegian, who's a terrific guy. He's made him happy. He stopped fighting them, and they're winning. Brian Smetzer is running a very happy club. Even when they were struggling last year, he was always saying, these guys in that locker room will put it right. And put it right they did. The running at the end of last year was spectacular. Now, that's a happy club. And the theme in pre-season clearly was, I mean, I don't think they won a game in pre-season.
No,
But they played all the kids. And he was obviously nursing them fitness-wise, the senior players. And then as soon as the season started, they were like a greyhound coming out of the flipping starting blocks. They were gone.
Brian's done a terrific job. And I think having worked under Ziggy, Brian was a head coach in the USL Sounders, did a great job. But I think it even elevated him to another level by being able to work with Ziggy, pick some things he liked, maybe discard some things he didn't like, and be his own guy. He does a great job. And he's got a good staff.
He's got a wonderful staff. Do you know they're all left-footers? Jimmy Traore, left foot, got a Champions League medal.
That's really funny.
Preki, who played for me at the Tacoma Stars, wonderful player, great young man. He's left-footed. Who's the other one?
Gonzalo?
Pineda, left-footed. The best goal, and Tommy Dutra is the best goalkeeper coach in America by a mile. I watch the game from the press box. I make sure I'm watching Tommy warm up the goalkeepers. He needs to insure his right leg for $1 million because if he ever pulled his muscle, he'd be out of work.
So he's not left-footed.
No, he's not, but he's right-footed. But I mean, the bottom line is, and Brian Smetzer is left-footed. That's the one I missed.
Wow.
So 4 of the 5 assistant coaches are left-footed.
That's a gem. A good job.
Oh yeah.
That's a factoid that I don't think I expected to get out of tonight.
Yeah. Well, guys, thanks for having us.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
a
Thank you
pleasure.
for coming out.
And on
This
March
is super
19th,
fun.
we'll have a lot of fun.
Story time.
Big-time stories. Do you want a story?
I
I'll give you the finishing story about
Okay.
Gary. Do you remember when the Seahawks lost in the last minute? You know where Gary
Rings
Wright
a bell.
was? Gary Wright was in the tunnel with the Seahawks families, wives, and everything, ready to let them go on the field because we're going to win. And the losing team's not allowed to go on the field. So all of a sudden they're going to win, and then the interception took place, and Gary had to say you can't go on. And because he's worked with the NFL at the Super Bowl forever and a day. Now that's a great story. And I also coached Marshawn Lynch a little bit in the Zakawani charity game, and Marshawn's on my team. So both teams were getting changed in the same locker room, and I go to the opposition, if Marshawn gets the ball, do yourself a favor and get out of the way.
Get out of the way.
And you know, Gary, I remember Gary, and the Seahawks and the Sounders have always had a great relationship going back all those many years. And like Gary said, there's no real worry about crossover and ticket sales. But in the end, it's a great game. I am blessed to live in Seattle. It's been a dream to coach the Sounders. Jack Daly died the other day, the first general manager who hired me, so I'll always be thankful for that. But it's a great community, and the future's it's going to be, for me, we'll not go down to the depths. We'll always be good or very good. And sometimes the bounce of the ball makes the difference. And that's the beauty of sports.
For sure.
Good message and a good story.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I'm
So-
sorry, following me is not easy, but I mean, I get excited, you know.
This is great. Thank you both for coming.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks for all
Thank
the
you so
time.
much. It was great.
Thank you. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Mickey.
All right, we'll let them get out of here, and we're going to close up or chat a little bit more.
We'll chat a couple minutes and then close it out.
Yes.
Good to go, Coach. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, that was Gary Wright and Alan Hinton. Thanks again for coming on the show. And go buy tickets to their event on March 17th or 19th.
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 I was trying to check the URL. wasoccerlegends.org. wasoccerlegends.org. And it's posted in the chat if you're in there. Why don't you shuffle on down, and I will stretch our screen and attempt some production efforts here. We'll see if it actually works. Good luck to me for trying something different. I think this is actually going to work.
Oh, look at that.
I'm going to go one big screen. How's that? Did that work out?
Fancy. Looks
It's not
good.
really very centered, but I'm going to be
that's all
okay with it. Anywho, good night, gentlemen. Thank you both. So that was fun.
Yeah, that was a good time.
Oh, wow, that did work.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm going to message Adam and be like, I owe you something for teaching me how to do all these things. So we got to cover a bunch of different stuff there. That was fun.
Yeah. Very good. Those are great storytellers.
We probably could have done that for like 5 more hours, so it was good that they were both like, if we were done at 8:30, is that okay? And I was like, sure, because we probably could have gone at least another 10 minutes just right there at the end. So we could probably talk predictions, but I would say like would love your press box version, 2 cents of you know, frankly the game the other day and just anything you've heard or seen or talked about since then.
Yeah, not too much since then. Like I said, Defiance on Friday was good, and then obviously the game from the press box was nice and warm, so there was that.
Yeah.
The only thing, and we talked about this last week a little bit, is just looking at them going forward. They're basically playing like a 3-back line now with Gustav like dropping back, and basically Leardom and Smith are just like basically going forward at like.
You mean
points.
Sounders golden boot
Yes,
tie, Kelvin Leardom?
Yeah, and so it's just interesting to see that formation work, and it seems to be working for them. But we'll see how it looks against better teams, of which Chicago is not.
Do you think it stays that way if it's not that he isn't as offensive minded, but do you think it would stay that way were it Nuhu Leardom as it is with Smith Leardom? Do you think it changes at all?
I don't think it changes, except in as much as Nuhu's offense isn't nearly as refined as Smith's is. Although he looked pretty good going forward against in his limited minutes against Cincinnati. I think it's just they're kind of just two different players. New
For sure.
clearly a superior defender, especially one-on-one. But their offense doesn't really call for him to do that. Or they want someone who can go forward, which is why Smith has probably gotten the nod over the last couple of games. And so I don't know if it would change their philosophy. I don't think they want to change their philosophy.
Agreed. Yeah.
So Nuhu may just be he may just have to prove his ability to be someone who can go forward, and so that allows Gustav to drop back, and they can run that three-man back line where Gustav sits with the center backs. The center backs go wide, and then Roldan kind of roams around the middle, breaking up plays.
Do you think Svensson's okay in this role, or
you mean is he okay with it, or do you think is he competent in it?
do you think is he okay with it? Because we saw some not clunky but interesting comments that he made recently
yes.
about sort of like picking up the slop or whatever it was. But
yeah.
I mean, is that like a judgment on the situation, or is that him just being him?
That's an interesting question. I have no inside information beyond his comments as far as what he feels like doing. I mean, I suppose he probably likes to get forward. He scored a couple of goals, a couple of bangers actually, for the Sounders over the last couple of years. So my guess is he would prefer to be going forward.
For sure.
But he'll do what the team asks him to do. And it's not like Roldan could be in the role he's playing now. And so if they're going with, kind of a 3-1-4-2 or whatever it is, my math may be off. But
so Sounders are sorry.
If that's what their philosophy is going forward, then that's where he's going to need to be.
It seems like they're just going to do we're going to bang on people for as long as we can, and then we're going to sub in Roman Torres for someone who's playing forward.
Yeah.
Like, is that the new strategy? Because he wants his goal so bad.
Roman. Yes.
Roman. Like, if I'm only going to get 10 to 15 minutes, I'm definitely scoring.
It'll be interesting to see what his kind of role is. If it's any more than that going forward, I don't think it will be, barring rotation or injury. I mean, he'll certainly get some starts, especially when there's 3 games in 8 days, of which there are several this
coming
year.
up. Yeah.
So he'll get probably 5 to 8 starts this year. Unless there's an injury. But it looks like that's going to be his role. So he'll get his chances coming off the bench.
He seemed happy coming on the field, and he seemed all right. So we'll see. I don't think you can read into that just yet.
Schmetzer said that he's bought into the role that the team has for him. I'm sure they would if there was a deal out there for them to move him, and he was happy with it, and they got a good return.
Might go.
Yeah, he might go. I mean, the transfer window isn't even closed until May.
Right.
And there's teams out there who will certainly need a center back of his quality. And so I don't know what they're going to – I think he is set where he is for now, unless some team calls and says we're willing to make an offer. But, again, I'm not sure that the Sounders are thrilled with their center back depth if he leaves.
Right.
Because at
but
that
right
point,
now he's the third one.
He is the third
right
one.
now.
Yeah. And you've got Campbell and Dellum and Svensson who can fill in a pinch. So I'm not sure they're over. Obviously Marshall and Kim Ki-hee, but I don't think they're particularly interested in moving him unless they get a great deal at this point.
Yeah.
Because if Marshall goes down, you're going to need Roman Torres filling in, because I'm sure they aren't thrilled with Campbell necessarily getting lots of minutes this year.
So just going right from there, because I think we could probably chop it up for 20 more minutes, or we could probably just give everybody an early night. I mean, let's just dig into Saturday. Chicago, not good.
Not good at all.
But it's noon.
Yeah.
It's away, and quick prediction.
MLS. It's so they lost a player to a red card. I think they're left back.
Or center, one of the center backs.
I think it was the
right?
left back.
It's the left back?
I'm pretty sure it's the left back. And they're just not very good. Again, it's going to be dreary conditions most likely.
Yep.
Low fan turnout most likely. And they're just, their defense is not very good, and that's before they lost one of their players. So the Sounders will probably come out in the same formation, same starting 11. No reason to change anything at this point. And they've done okay in Chicago before. So I would say I can't see anything but a Sounders victory if if they look how they've looked previously. So I would predict a 3-2-1 victory for the Sounders.
3-1. Yes.
If they're playing so early in Chicago, does that mean they'll get back in time to go to Comic-Con on Sunday?
That's a really good question because I bet you they would probably fly back.
Oh, I would highly
Noon
bet
game.
they'll
They're
be done by
taking the
3.
6 p.m. flight
Yeah,
home.
yeah.
So
They will
the
absolutely be
players,
home.
the question was, since they're playing so early, will they get back in time for Comic-Con? And there are multiple Sounders players, not a small number, that probably want to be somewhat involved in Comic-Con. So that's a great question. Good shout. So you say 3-1?
3-1.
I'm going to say 2-0.
2-0.
Again, we're going to stick to the 2-0 runs. Do not care. This offense is potent AF.
Yeah.
And I can absolutely see them coming out hot just because you're away. Let's make a move. Team's down a starting defender and. So that's pretty big for me. So again, unless you have any other parting words, I think I want to just thank Coach Alan Hinton and Gary Wright for coming out tonight. That was fun. Some cool things they've got going on the 19th for a good cause, supporting just soccer in Washington, which is awesome. If you want to come out and watch games, there's actually all sorts of cool viewings in the region for this weekend.
AC's got a brunch.
AC brunch. I think the Olympia folks are doing some things. There's all sorts of cool stuff out there. I know that 253 and ASG are doing some things. So, keep an eye out for those sorts of things. If you like probably straight from EPL into Sounders, if you're into that for Saturday, now's your time. So thanks to the folks here at the Berliner. Mickey Turner, thank you kindly.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank y'all for showing up week after week after week, and have a good rest of the night, everybody.